Everyone, I'm Suresh, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we are going to dive deep into what, for so many students, is the most frustrating part of the SAT, the evidence-based reading section. Our goal here is to give you the strategies you need to turn this whole section from something you dread into a place where you can confidently rack up points.
So, have you ever been staring at a reading question and it feels like every single answer could be right? Or maybe that none of them are right? Yeah, if you felt that, you are definitely not alone. It's a super common feeling, and to be honest, it's kind of by design.
And that feeling is completely valid. The folks at Prep Scholar put it perfectly. The SAT is just a weird test. It's not like the tests you take in school. It's not just testing what you know. It's testing how you think, how you handle pressure, and really how well you can play its very specific game. And that's why you can't study for it like a normal test. You have to learn the game.
So here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to lay out the rules of the new game, the overview and the pacing. Then we'll get into specific tactics for the different kinds of passages: narrative, historical, and science. After that, we'll uncover the real secret to finding the right answer. And finally, we'll talk about how to practice so that you actually see improvement.
Okay, let's start with the absolute fundamentals. You can't win the game if you don't know the rules, right? So here's how the new digital SAT reading and writing section is structured.
So the new digital format is really a sprint. You get two main parts or modules. Each one has 27 questions and you only get 32 minutes to do them. Do the math? That's just a little over a minute for each question. Now the good news is the passages are super short now, just a small paragraph with one single question attached. That makes it feel more manageable, but you gotta know, that pace is relentless.
Now here's the real game changer with the digital test. It's adaptive. This is so important to understand. Your performance on that first module actually determines what the second module looks like. If you nail the first one, the test gives you a harder set of questions. And you want that, because that's the only way to get into the top score range. But if you struggle on Module 1, the test gives you an easier second module, which sounds nice, but it actually puts a hard ceiling on your score. That first module is absolutely critical.
So with that insane time pressure, you need a rock-solid reading strategy. Most people who do really well on this test use one of two main approaches. Some people like to skim the little passage first to get the main idea and then look at the question. Other people find it's way faster to read the question first so they know exactly what they're hunting for in the text. There is no one right way. You've got to play around with practice tests and see what feels faster and gets you more right answers.
All right, here's a great little active reading trick. It's called caveman notes. Yeah, it sounds a little silly, but it is so effective. As you read a passage, you just jot down a super short, simple summary, like author hates king or study proves idea. It forces your brain to actually process the main point, which is a lifesaver for finding the main idea and quickly navigating back to the text.
Okay, now let's get into strategies for specific types of passages, starting with two that often trip people up: the fictional stories and the dense historical arguments.
When you see a fiction passage, your brain should immediately lock onto three things: character, plot, and tone. You should be asking yourself, what does this character want? Or what's the main problem here? And please, whatever you do, always read that tiny little italicized intro at the top of the passage. It gives you so much crucial context. A great trick is to just underline words that show you how the author feels. Words like beloved versus fool are huge clues.
Historical passages can feel really intimidating with all the old-fashioned language, but don't get lost in the wherefores and heretofores. Your one and only job is to figure out the author's main point. What are they trying to convince you of? Look for those signal words like however or therefore. They're like signposts telling you where the argument is going. Is the author contrasting two ideas, showing cause and effect? Just focus on that core logic.
Next up, the science and social science passages. You know, these are the ones that feel like they're ripped straight out of a textbook, and they very often have charts or graphs attached.
The key to these science passages is to read them like a scientist would. Have a system. First, what's the main hypothesis? What were they trying to figure out? Second, how did they do it? What was the method? Third, what happened? What were the results? And if you see a graph, ask yourself, what are the axes measuring and what's the main trend? And finally, this is a big one, Learn to separate the hard factual results from the author's own opinion or interpretation of those results.
So we've talked a lot about reading the passages, but how do you actually choose the right answer from that list of 4 options? Well, here is the single most important mindset shift you can make. The secret isn't about finding what's right, it's about proving with evidence what's wrong.
This is it. This is the core philosophy of SAT reading. There's no such thing as a pretty good answer or an almost correct choice. For an answer to be the right one, it has to be 100% supported by the text. If you can find just one word that makes it even a tiny bit inaccurate, it is completely, totally, 100% wrong. You have to be ruthless. And to be ruthless, you need to know the common traps they set for you. First, watch out for the 1% wrong answer. It looks perfect, but one word is just off. Then there's the out-of-scope answer, which is either way too broad or way too specific. And finally, you have to learn to spot the reversed relationship, which uses all the right keywords from the passage but just flips the logic backwards. Knowing these traps is half the battle.
Now, the command of evidence question is the signature move of this section. It's a 2-part punch. First, you answer a normal question, but then the very next question asks you to pick the exact quote from the text that proves your answer. Here's the strategy. The quote you pick has to be direct, undeniable proof for the answer you just chose. They have to lock together perfectly, like 2 puzzle pieces.
And finally, words and context questions. This isn't just a vocab test. The SAT loves to take a common word that has a less common secondary meaning. For instance, they might use the word buttress, not to talk about a castle wall, but to mean to support an argument. You have to use the clues in the sentence around the word to figure out exactly how it's being used in that specific context.
So look, all of these strategies are great in theory, but real improvement, the kind that actually moves your score up, it only comes from one place: focused, deliberate practice and review.
Here's your plan for a higher score. First, only use the official practice tests in the College Board's Blue Book app. They're the real deal. Second, as you're taking the test, flag every single question you feel even a tiny bit unsure about. Third, and this is so important, when you review, don't just look at the right answer. For every question you got wrong or flagged, try to solve it again on your own first. Then, fourth, you have to keep a mistake log. Actually write down why you got it wrong.
And this brings us to what will become your most powerful study tool, your mistake log. I'm serious. It can be a notebook, a spreadsheet, or a stack of index cards. It doesn't matter. For every single error, you write down why your answer was wrong and why the correct answer was 100% right. This is how you find your blind spots and systematically turn your weaknesses into strengths.
At the end of the day, you have to remember this. The SAT is not a measure of how smart you are. It's a test of skills. It's a test of patterns. It is a game. And the good news is, any game can be learned. It can be mastered. So the only question left is, are you ready to master it?
That's all for this explainer. I'm Suresh. Thanks for joining me. Now go get to work.